And I now know that the closer that I get to truth, the simpler it has to be. The more complex we make it, the more we're going to analyze. And we can't get there in analysis, because analysis is trying to figure it out. Now, there's nothing wrong with analyzing things, but when it comes time to create or to change, you got to lay that down. So I think from a very practical and experience-based model, that people have to begin to embrace knowledge and information before they get about doing anything. So I'm not so interested in labels, NLP, hypnosis, because I think people get stuck in trying to create a limited model. Now, what I love is truth, and there are similarities. Whether you're talking about NLP, or you're talking about the Bible, or the Quran, or you're talking about hypnosis, there are elements of those things that have helped people. Now, I don't study NLP, although I'm invited to NLP conferences to explain the neuroscience and biology of personal change and transformation. I started my journey studying hypnosis and hypnotherapy because what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. And when you teach people or help people get beyond their analytical mind, now you enter the operating system where you can begin to reprogram a person. So there are elements of all of those things that are pieces of important truths. But I wouldn't categorize them, because the moment I say NLP, the moment I say chakra, the moment I say hypnosis, the moment I say Jesus, the moment you say Kabbalah, the moment you say something, you're going to divide an audience. Because some people are going to say, oh, I tried that, it didn't work, I don't even know what that means. So I'm very, very aware of all of that, and I'm very particular in the language that I use, because I don't want people to categorize that. I want it to be in a realm where they can say, well, that's kind of like this, or that's kind of like what Jesus said, or that's kind of like what I learned in NLP, or I think I heard that in the Kabbalah somewhere, or I saw that on, the History Channel. It doesn't matter. I don't want to take this and put it in a box. I want to keep evolving it. I want to keep changing it. There's similarities. Truth are threads that in history that have been laid. And I go to great measures to not categorize it, because the moment you put it in a box, you're running it through your neurological network of the past, and then all of a sudden you diminish its effect. So I keep it fresh. I never use any of those words or languages, because those words were great 2,000 years ago. Those words were consistent with the language of 5,000 years ago. And I've been at religious conferences where I've been invited and watched great religious scholars argue about a word, argue about the meaning of a word. So after an hour, I'll say to them, well, let's make up a new word. Well, let's make up a new word that everybody can agree on. Forget the old word. Let's come up with a new word that everybody can agree on. Now that's a more important conversation, don't you think, than the conversation of the past. So for me, I'm not so interested in talking about history. I'm interested in making history. And this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And you could be black, you could be white, you could be old, you could be young, you could be sick, you could be vegetarian, you could be in shape, you could be out of shape, you could be rich, you could be poor, you could be successful, you could have never, ever had any experience in meditation or personal transformation. It doesn't matter. I've seen it on all shapes, all sizes, all colors, all cultures, sick people, healthy people, young people, old people. All you got to do is apply the formula. That's it. Nobody's excluded from the phenomenon. And my job is to not create any exclusivity. My job is to create community. And science creates community. It's the language. It's the contemporary language we use. So if you're living in a world where men have to provide and show a certain amount of success and be competitive, then you're not going to open your heart. It's not a time to do that. It's a time to survive and thrive in an environment. And yet, in our work, I see men that if they practice, opening their hearts, and it's just being a child again, being a boy again, being curious, being wondering, being free, allowing yourself to let go. And for men, we have to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want, for something greater to occur. Now, the side effect of that, when men truly do this, I've seen them instantaneously heal from things, from serious heart conditions where they couldn't take more than 40 steps without having an angina reaction, severe chest pain, to stage 4 cancer. The house of cards, when it falls, energy moves into a different place, and the body begins to release 13 or 1400 different chemicals that begin to restore and repair the body. So to the intellectual mind, if a man begins to understand that when they open their heart, they could heal. When they open their heart, they can lead from a different consciousness, that it's actually an advantage, and they understand the science of why in their rational mind, then they go after it. Now they're in hot pursuit of it because it makes sense to them. But there's not a lot of evidence or support in our environment for men to be vulnerable. And yet the latest research shows that vulnerability is one of the 5 top qualities for a great leader. So when men begin to think this through, they start to slowly by slowly, just like a flower blooming, petal by petal, they start trusting a little bit more. They start opening up a little bit more. They start getting happier. They start breaking down the wall, the facade that they've created to have an appearance of being a certain way for the world, and yet feeling so empty inside of them. They start realizing that the joy that they want never came from success, never came from wealth or popularity or whatever men do, but it really comes from within. So we give them numerous opportunities to practice, numerous opportunities to connect. And the heart opens also when you care for another person, when you care for other people, when you give, when you experience gratitude. So a lot of times men, when we do our healings, when we heal other people, you got to be in your heart. And in a very indirect and sneaky way, I know that when I get men in that state and their passion to truly give, that's why they provide with such intensity, is framed in a different way, the heart opens up, and then they become more like a child again. They become free and relaxed and less rigid.